Welcome to Wayne County Connection. I'm your host, Michael Sweigart, on the steps of the wonderful Wayne County Historical Museum. Come on inside and let's learn more about this fantastic institution. We are privileged to be inside at the Jeanette Records studio exhibit here at the Wayne County Historical Museum. Before we get into our conversation today, I would like to remind you to do your part to get connected to make Wayne County a great place to work, live, and play. There are a lot of events and activities going on as we come into the summer months. There are lots of ways for you to connect in your community, and we encourage you to seek out an organization, an agency, or other individuals that you can connect with to bring your talents to bear on making Wayne County a great place to work, live, and play. Now I'd like you to join me in welcoming back to our show Karen Shank-Chapman. She is the Executive Director at the Wayne County Historical Museum. Karen, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
I say welcome back because you were on our program about 5 years ago when you were brand new to the museum. But for those of our viewers who may be new to the program or who missed that episode, tell us a little bit about yourself and your connection with Wayne County.
Well, I grew up here in Richmond, and I came to this museum quite often growing up. So I was really fascinated by the mummy. I'm probably not the only one, but he kind of made me think about archaeology. So when I went off to college, I majored in archaeology, and then I majored in museum studies, and it brought me right back here. So I not only get to be back in my community, but I get to take care of the mummy too. So it's a win-win.
It is a win-win. You told us in your first appearance on our program that you had worked at the Indiana State Museum, and then when this opportunity came open, you were really kind of hesitant. You were like, it's a big step to take in my career. But now you've had 5 years in it and you've flourished. The museum has flourished. There's some great things that have been going on. And so I want to just take you back and let's go over the museum, kind of a 30,000 foot view of the history and background of the Wayne County Historical Museum.
Yeah, actually we have a pretty cool story. So our founder was Julia Meek Gar, and while she was not originally from Richmond, she did marry a fellow that was from here, who was part of the Gar family. So they were part of the Gar Scott Company that made all those big steam engines and such. And when she got married to him, they had some money, so she decided to start traveling the world, and her goal was to bring artifacts back to Richmond for kids who might not be able to travel the world. Of course, this was in the 19-teens and 20s, so you had to travel by ship a lot. So she was out and about in other countries a lot. She went to Egypt 7 different times. She really loved Egypt. But the other cool thing about Julia is that she tried to study at other museums to learn what it was like to run a museum. There wasn't a lot of ladies around at that time that were doing that kind of stuff. And Richmond is unique too. We had 2 strong ladies running museums about the same time, not only here, but at the Richmond Art Museum. So Julia did work with their director some before she got this building here, which is it's a Hicksite Quaker meeting house, and then that was gifted to her in 1929. She opened the doors in 1930, shortly after she got our mummy here. I think he was her pride and joy as well. So then people started coming in, not only to see her world collection, but her awesome, amazing collection of Wayne County artifacts. And from that time forward, we have just built on what she started. So we have a really awesome world collection, but we also have an amazing Wayne County collection here too.
Yeah, I think sometimes people may be thrown off a little bit by the term Wayne County Historical Museum, and yet 2 of the main larger features are not from Wayne County. The mummy you mentioned repeatedly, there's a statue out on the lawn that is not native to Wayne County, but the Wayne County Historical Museum does have this fabulous record of the history and background of what's gone on in Wayne County. And there are some wonderful displays upstairs. You have a very large display relating to some of the manufacturing that's gone on in Wayne County.
Absolutely.
And I mentioned at the top of the show that we're in the Jeanette Records studio recreation exhibit here. So tell us a little bit about the wide variety of Wayne County artifacts that you have throughout the museum.
Oh, sure. We start with our First Nations, the first people who were here in Wayne County, so our Native Americans, and we start the story with them and move forward in time with our pioneers and people who were coming into Wayne County and why. But then the people who stayed were those manufacturers. We had auto manufacturers. We had 18 here in Wayne County, believe it or not, at one time. We were once the lawnmower capital of the world, believe it or not. So
Yeah,
we had lawnmowers, we had roller skate manufacturers. The Wright brothers lived here for a while. So all of that, the Gar Scott Company, so there was a lot of really great industry happening. And of course, there was the Jeanette family that moved here to Richmond to work with the Starr family at the Starr Piano Factory. And as time went on, innovation took over. The Jeanette family was more interested in phonographs and recording, and that's kind of the direction they went in, and history was made. So we're super excited to be able to tell that story too.
And that is a fabulous story. I want to talk a little bit more about the studio, but we're going to hold off on that for just a minute while we talk about some of the things you've mentioned. You talked about 18 automobile manufacturers,
Yes.
and we know that there's another automobile museum here in town that is not about native Richmond manufacturing, but the Wayne County Historical Museum has a vast collection of those cars.
We do.
And how many cars do you have that were manufactured in Richmond or the surrounding area?
I would say in our full collection, not everything's always on exhibit, so probably about 20 examples of different ones. Our favorite being the Pilot, because it's a one of a kind. You can't find another one, and it's a really neat vehicle.
That is really neat. And one of the things that we connected with when you and I first spoke 5 years ago was about this idea of Richmond artifacts in other museums.
Oh, yeah.
And you mentioned in particular that one of the things that really sparked your interest when you were studying, when you were younger and visiting museums and then studying museum curation and so forth, finding Richmond artifacts in other areas. And so I want to ask you, outside of the Wayne County Historical Museum, what's the furthest away that you found a Richmond artifact, or the most interesting artifact that you found in another museum?
That's a great question. I think the one that sticks out that was the most surprising, I was at the Smithsonian, actually, Natural History Museum, and I saw our fossils there from here in Wayne County. And while that's more natural history, I've always been into that too. So, fossil hunting in the gorge and that sort of thing. But to see an example all the way down in Washington, D.C., not just in DC, but the Smithsonian, for goodness sake, that was pretty impactful to see that and to know that part of our heritage here in Wayne County is being showcased to the world there. So that's pretty cool.
It is very cool. And then that brings me to my next question is, we talked about the world events, and one of the things that we do on the program is making the connections and promoting Wayne County as a great place to work, live, and play. And so one of the questions that I have for you is, how does the Wayne County Historical Museum not only preserve the Wayne County history past, but kind of put Wayne County on the map, bring interest to Wayne County from around the world?
Yeah, one thing that we really like to do when we're doing our larger exhibits is try to find artifacts from around the country or further away even that represent stories from Wayne County. So Jeanette is another great example of that, because last year we were able to work with a variety of museums and individuals around the country to bring artifacts here that maybe people wouldn't get to see otherwise. So we're continuing to build on that with each exhibit that we do every year.
And I mentioned again at the beginning of the program, this is part of a 2-part episode. We're going to take a tour in the next episode, so come back next month and watch again. But upstairs, near the main entrance, you have a display of Jelly Roll Morton and an interactive display about Jeanette Records. And one of the things that brings to mind is the importance of the museum for preserving our history, but how it also not only showcases where we've come from and what we're doing, but how it connects with today and the future. And tell us how you've done that here at the museum.
One of the interactives that we have, which was designed by the Indiana Historical Society, because they're a little bit more technically advanced than we are here, but it's really neat because you can select any artist that you can think of pretty much, and it can connect you back to a Jeanette musician, for example. So that's kind of an interactive version of what we're trying to do all over the place in the museum, really, is try to make those connections from the present back to the past and make the past relevant today, because we are living history every single day. So yeah.
That's one of your catchphrases, and you have several that are pretty interesting. One of the things that you mentioned is one of your kind of the mantras that you have is the museum is a place for everyone to see a reflection of themselves.
Absolutely.
So how does the Wayne County Historical Museum reflect everyone that comes through the door?
We are definitely working towards being more diverse with our exhibits. We haven't always done a great job of that in the past, so we're really trying to bring those stories here to the museum through oral histories, through exhibits, things like that. It's really important for us too that people are telling the stories from their own experiences and their own histories. We're not all equipped to tell stories from other people's experiences. So we have an exhibit that we will be opening soon that will deal with just that. So it's on the Black history of Wayne County. So really illustrating and telling those stories, bringing them forward. And again, that just kind of solidifies people, anybody who walks through our door, we want them to see that reflection of themselves. We want them to be able to have pride from where they come from, and to really know that there are some really amazing folks from Wayne County from various backgrounds too.
Even the best historian will have their own perspective to bring to the story, and so it really helps to have that eyewitness to history, if you will, to bring that different perspective about what was going on at any given point in time. Even today as we're living history, as you said. You also mentioned that you not only, this ties into exactly what you said, the oral histories, you not only wanted for everyone to see a reflection of themselves as they go through the museum, but you also wanted people to hear their own voice or be able to understand that voice. And so you talked about oral histories, and when you came to the organization, one of the things you mentioned was an oral history project. And so what kinds of oral history projects have been done or are planned for the future at the museum?
That's a great question. So we have worked with, believe it or not, people who used to race here in Wayne County. That was one of the first ones we did, was taking the oral histories of race car drivers, because we had dirt tracks here, so in midget car racing and things like that, and we had a lot of the big winners from right here in Wayne County. Who knew, right? So that was really interesting because I learned so much. But then we did some with the Jeanette family, so they could talk about their experience growing up in that family and what their knowledge and things were. And currently, while the museum didn't spearhead it, our co-curator, Marlene Lindsay of Black Legacy Project of Wayne County, Indiana, she worked with Eric Marsh actually and did a lot of oral histories on some of the Black residents here in Wayne County that we will be exhibiting here in the near future.
So you mentioned two major exhibits here at the museum, and I want to just touch base with those because, as I said, we're sitting in the Jeanette Records studio exhibit, and that has been a big focus for the past year. It's been a big exhibit. There are a couple of places throughout the museum where that's tied in, and some of that is going away.
It will.
Those are either not being kept in the permanent collection because they were on loan or not on public display all the time just because of the limited space.
Absolutely.
So I want to touch base on that and talk about some of the things that are going away soon, so people need to come in and see them quickly.
Yeah, so pretty much a lot of our loan artifacts, so things that came from for example, the Jazz Museum or the Louisiana State Museum down in New Orleans area. We had some artifacts come from there. We had some things from the Bix-Beiderbecke Museum in Iowa. The Country Music Hall of Fame. They have given us some oral history and some images. But we've also got stuff, I'm trying to think of some of the birthplace of country music was another one, and then family members as well from some of the musicians and the Jeanettes themselves. So a lot of the loaned artifacts will go away, but the permanent stuff will be brought down here and then put on exhibit so people can enjoy it.
And then you also talked about something that's coming up, and your next major year-long exhibit is going to be this Black Legacy exhibit. And talk about what's going to be starting and when that's going to be starting and what we can expect to see?
Sure. It will open to the public on Sunday, June 25th. We usually do a public opening and program, so we hope everybody can come out for that. We will have live interpreters that day and such, but the exhibit itself will be throughout the museum again, but it will be woven into our main narrative from 1800 to the present, really highlighting a lot of our Black residents that people might not know about. A lot of people have heard of C.R. Richardson or Lamar Lundy, who was the big football player, but there was a lot of other really cool people from here too, and we really want to highlight those through time and make sure they are part of our narrative here at the museum.
And what kinds of things can people expect to see that they might not have? One of the things that people think about museums frequently is that it's pretty static. And I think you've gotten the impression, viewers, that the Wayne County Historical Museum in particular is not a static place. It is ever changing. Things are on display or off display. But what are some of the things that you would expect visitors who haven't been here for a while to be really surprised by if they came to visit in the next few months?
Oh, yeah. Well, not just our changing, exhibits that change out every year, but we work throughout the museum to update exhibits. We get a lot of people that say they haven't been here since 4th grade, so we try to give them a reason to come back more often than that. So we've redone our Conestoga wagon exhibit, for example, so it's a lot more immersive. We have redone our agricultural building and blacksmith shop, and we have a whole new exhibit on St. John's Lutheran Church too that people might not have seen yet. So just a lot of variety to really kind of illustrate the wide tapestry of Wayne County, its culture and its people.
You've used a few adjectives that I want to pick out and talk about, and you said interactive, immersive, and the museum is not a static event. It is something for people to engage with.
Yes.
And how does that enhance people's understanding of history and their ability to build on that for a better future?
I think it's really cool for starting conversations. I love to watch people in the museum. So generationally, you'll hear like a mom or a dad talking to a child about, oh, I remember this thing, or my grandmother had this thing. Or just being able to kind of step into a space and feel like you're there. Sometimes that can really put you in the frame of mind of understanding and kind of realizing what it was like at a certain time here, maybe in Wayne County, maybe in another area. But that's kind of what I like about museums. They kind of can transport you to any time or place that you allow them to.
Speaking of time and place, specifically place, you mentioned a lot of museums and interactions, connections that were made between the Wayne County Historical Museum and museums in other parts of the country. And a couple of times we've mentioned this Iowa connection, not only with Julia Garr, but also with Bixby. I always mispronounce his last name.
It's okay.
Anyway, both from Iowa. And that, to me, speaks of connection and putting Wayne County on the map.
Absolutely.
Does that really play out for you when you interact with other museum directors or other visitors from around the country?
Yeah, believe it or not, one thing that I'm thinking of is we did some work with suffrage. Of course, it was during the pandemic. It was 2020, but we really wanted to celebrate the suffrage movement and its centennial. One thing that I hadn't realized before I started working on that is that Wayne County was second to Seneca Falls in New York to start the suffrage movement. So Wayne County is where it started for Indiana, but we were second pretty much in the whole country. So that was a pretty big deal, at that time. So we've been first or real close to first in a lot of different things like that. So another wonderful reason to feel pride in our wonderful county.
So Wayne County is a great place to work, live, and play.
It is.
And we've got that from the earliest days until now. Mm-hmm. You mentioned racing earlier, and we've talked on this program before about the model for the Indianapolis 500 track was actually here in Wayne County.
It was,
and,
yeah.
It's unfortunately not a museum exhibit, but it's pretty interesting fact and foundation for Wayne County.
Absolutely.
You talked a little bit about artifacts from other people and the St. John Lutheran Church and so forth. So if there's somebody watching today and they think, oh, I have an interesting artifact, I think the museum would like this. It's not really a place to store your garage sale failure items, right?
Correct.
But how would someone know if they have an artifact that is museum quality?
Oh, that's a good question. So really what we look for is that Wayne County connection or a connection to one of our other collections. So for example, Greece or Egypt or something to that effect. Also, we have to always make sure that the person is the rightful owner of said artifact. But the best way to get the information to us, just shoot us an email. We have a quick form that you fill out. Send us a photograph. We have a collections committee that meets every month, and we discuss potential accessions, and that's kind of where the decision's made. So we always are very interested to see what people might have, because that's where we find some of the coolest stuff. So you never know, but yeah, just shoot us an email, or you can even stop by if you like and chat with us that way.
Speaking of stopping by, there might be somebody watching who has driven past this place and just not really paid attention. So for all of our viewers, how can we get in touch? Where is the museum located, and how do we get in touch?
Okay, we're at 1150 North A Street in Richmond, of course. So you can just come on in, or you can give us a call at 765-962-5756, or you can email at office@wchmuseum.org for general information. And we, of course, have a website, which is...
We'll get it on the lower thirds.
Okay, good. Because I was like, whoa. All right. Sorry.
Yeah. And do you have social media accounts that people
we sure
can follow
do.
also?
Instagram and Facebook.
Yes.
And then we have a YouTube channel too.
So now I'm going to throw us all the way back to some of the plans that you had when you first came on board. And one of the things that you mentioned that you'd like to try here at the museum is this idea of camps, summer camps for youth. What have you done, Karen? How's that come along for you?
Actually, pretty well. We had our first one in 2019. Of course, we had to put a little bit of a hold on things in 2020, but we tried a virtual camp, which wasn't nearly as cool because kids love to be in the museum, right?
Sure.
But we just brought it back last year. We were totally full. So what we do is we kind of base it on Julia's adventures. So we start from archaeology, so finding an artifact in the ground all the way to the time it becomes an artifact in a museum. And then the kids get to create their own museum exhibit at the end to show off to their parents or their grown-ups. So that's a lot of fun. So, you know, they get to dig in the ground, they get to preserve an artifact, and they get to show off their own very own museum of whatever creation they desire. So.
And this is 2023, so what are the dates and what are the ages? Who can participate in this?
It will be in mid-July this year, and of course you can find more information on our website, but it's ages 8 to 13, and it's just a whole lot of fun.
It's just a whole lot of fun. It's a day camp. It's not an overnight experience.
Yeah, it's a whole day camp for a week.
Although I suggested that when we were talking a few years back. Camping on the grounds is a little bit problematic still.
We have had some Girl Scout troops spend the night here, so we're open to whatever. whatever encourages that lifelong learning and that's right.
And that connection.
We like to spark kids' wonder. You know, a lot of us grew up coming to this museum, and our wonder was obviously sparked because we're back here working. So we hope to spark that next generation as well.
So as we come to the close of this episode, I'd like to talk about volunteers and other ways that people can get connected with the museum. Of course, they can come and go browse the collections, and there are many collections. We'll get to see some of those and touch base with that next episode. But what are other ways that people can get connected?
Oh yeah, so we always need volunteers. So we have a variety of ways people can volunteer at the museum. If you like to work with exhibits, if you like to learn how to preserve and catalog collections, we've got that for you. Beautifying our buildings and grounds. And serving with our programs committees as well, because we do a lot of programs, so we need a lot of people. And then probably most importantly this time of year are our docents, because they lead our school tours and we get all the Wayne County kids and then some. So we can use docents always. You can connect with us via our website. And we've got a volunteer form you can fill out, and we'll get you started. We would
Do
love.
people have to come in with a huge knowledge of Wayne County history?
Absolutely not. No. We love to teach people, but there's always ways to learn as you do, and we have trainings and such.
So basically, you just want to share your experience.
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate you being and talking about the museum and some of the connections and the way it's made Wayne County a great place to work, live, and play, the way it puts Wayne County on the map nationally and internationally. And I'm going to be really excited to walk through the museum with you as we go into our next episode. And I want to encourage you to come back and join us as we walk through the Wayne County Museum and see some of the exhibits that are available here. Share the episode with your friends and neighbors who may not be able to watch it on broadcast. It is available on demand. You can check that out at the Whitewater Community Television page on YouTube and other places. I'm your host, Michael Sweigart. My guest so far today has been Sharon Shank-Chapman.
Yep,
I'm so sorry. I'm so excited to just be with you today. And I want to thank you for watching. Be sure also, as you're viewing, we'll talk about this a little bit toward the end of the next episode, about ways that you can take home a piece of the museum with you. I'm Michael Sweigart. We'll see you next month.